going live for the real world too. I'm going to take this opportunity to blow my nose real quick. Excuse me.
Do you all see me or the slide deck right now? Is the slide deck there?
I see you on the side of the gallery and I see the slide deck.
Okay. You see the slide deck right now?
I do. Just the front page.
Okay. I don't see the slide deck if I come back into the Zoom meeting, which is weird. See the.
Are you looking at it on your
if I come
screen?
back into the Zoom meeting. No, I have. See the.
Are you looking at it on?
And it says you're screen sharing and it shows the thing, but I don't see, if I come into the Zoom meeting, I don't see the deck, which is odd.
Oh, that's going to be really helpful for reading off of your slides, isn't it?
I'm going to just stay in the slide, apparently.
Okay. Well, it's 101.
So
I'm going to.
When others are going, just let me know. I will try and advance the slides, but if I'm not, just say advance the slide, please.
Sounds good. And is the first slide the housekeeping slide?
Yes.
Okay, so once it's housekeeping time, will you put that up for me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm gonna start the webinar.
Recording in progress.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you for joining us today for a webinar on the fiscal year 2024 state budget. Before we get started today, I just want to review a few housekeeping items. First of all, this is a webinar. It's not a meeting. So everybody is muted by default. So we encourage you to please use the chat to discuss different things. But remember that there are many other people here with a variety of viewpoints. So please keep your comments respectful, and we ask to avoid cursing or using derogatory remarks. We also reserve the right to remove anybody we deem to be disruptive, but this has never been an issue, and we generally have a great audience and group of people, so we look forward to it being a productive conversation today. We'll be answering your questions at the end after the presentation portion. After the presentation portion. So please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom webinar panel. It looks like two word bubbles that says Q&A. So please click that and ask your questions there, as that allows us to track them more effectively and to make sure that we answer as many as possible. Sometimes the chat gets very lively and questions can sometimes get lost. We do have American Sign Language interpreters today. Since the last time we had a webinar, Zoom has made some updates to their platform. So there is an interpretation button at the bottom of the Zoom panel, which has what appears to be a round globe image next to it. If you click the interpretation button, you should have a drop-down menu that comes on screen that offers the option for sign language off or American Sign Language. If you click American Sign Language, the interpreter will appear in a new panel. For captioning today, you can click on, well, on my screen, it looks like 3 dots that say more, and then there's an option to click captions, but there's the option to elect closed captioning as well. So I think that's about it for housekeeping today. I will then kick it off to Brian, who will make some introductions and give us an overview of what we'll be talking about today.
Hi all, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Some of you may have gotten a preview of some of this information right after the budget was released as part of our advocacy day. We have learned more in the time since then, so hopefully you'll learn some more today. And for those of you who were not with us at that point, welcome and thank you for joining us. Hope that this is a useful and informative hour. We have a bunch of material that we do want to go over. There is a lot to digest in this budget. And there's a lot that's not in the budget that we need to digest as well. So some of the major issues that were included in the budget are the increases in eligibility for the Medicaid buy-in for working people with disabilities, the governor's proposal to end the $3 over minimum wage for home care workers, the new home care minimum wage that was created, which would slowly return this to a minimum wage job. The governor's failure to do anything to hold insurance companies accountable for the money that they have kept that was meant for workers. The governor's proposal to mandate those same insurance companies to drastically reduce the number of fiscal intermediaries or agencies across the state, and her proposal to enact what would amount to wage reductions of up to $4 an hour across New York City, Long Island, and Westchester. There are also some pieces that we'll talk about briefly that were not included in her budget, which is the entirety of the Fair Pay for Home Care proposal. She did not restore former Governor Cuomo's eligibility cuts for home care that, among other things, require a minimum number of activities of daily living in order to receive home care. And she did not change the independent assessment process being run by Maximus that is an unmitigated disaster, I think is probably the best way to phrase that. So there are a number of different pieces that we are looking to go over, and then we'll go over a little bit as to what you can do, how you can join us in continuing to make sure that this budget is a strong budget for CDPA, for home care, and really for folks who need community-based services overall, whether living with a disability or older and not identifying as someone with a disability but needing the services. So as we get in, we'll start with the positive, and this can't be undersold. The governor wants to increase eligibility for the Medicaid buy-in for working people with disabilities. This is a phenomenal program that allows folks to go to work and still qualify for the Medicaid benefits that they need in order to survive. Um, this measure is critical for folks who need home care, who have disabilities and need those home care services to join the workplace. There is no other way for that to happen in many instances. Right now, folks are often in a spot where they are capped out. They cannot earn more than about $65,000, or maybe a little bit more this year. That has resulted in many people choosing not to enter the workplace to begin with. It has resulted in people who do earning less than people that they supervise out of a need. It has resulted in people taking unpaid vacations and the like because of bonuses or other materials that come in. It really results in a forced impoverishment of people with disabilities, even when in the workplace. The governor would dramatically change eligibility, increasing eligibility on a sliding scale up to $600,000 a year. She would increase the asset limits to $300,000 and exempt a home, at least one car, in some instances up to two. Retirement accounts would be exempt, and settlements and other more obscure resources would also be exempt. Um, she would remove the marriage penalty, meaning spouse's income would not be included in a calculation of eligibility. Spouse's assets would not be included, allowing folks to get married to the person they love, which ends a very high discriminatory bar that has been in place for decades. Um, she would remove age limits at both the upper and lower end. So young people as low as 16 would now be able to join, and people would not be forced into retirement anymore when they qualify for Medicare. Currently, when you turn 65, you are off of the Medicaid buy-in for working people with disabilities, meaning if you choose to work, you lose your Medicaid. Um, there are some areas where the proposal could be improved. She does require 40 hours a week of work per month. It's not an extraordinarily high threshold, but there are some folks who do work, and do work for fewer than 40 hours. We want everyone to be able to work however much they can and however much they need to, and still be able to qualify for the Medicaid services they need. We don't think that 40-hour limit is necessary. It also caps enrollment at 30,000 people. Now, there's approximately 18,000 who are using the program today. It does allow for approximately 12,000 more, but we think that is an odd proposal to cap the buy-in. We either want folks with disabilities in the workplace or we don't. Capping it at 30,000 seems weird, to be polite. But neither of those are so onerous that they require trying to tank the entire proposal. This will be a significant improvement for those 18,000 people who are using it today. It will be a significant improvement for the other 12,000. As we move forward, if these enrollment caps stay in place, if the hours of work per month stay in place, we can work to continue to improve it. But it can't be understated the improvement in the Medicaid buy-in that the governor is proposing. Unfortunately, the budget doesn't do anything to eliminate the workforce crisis, eliminate the problems that are preventing people who are using home care from actually getting the benefit. The state is very fond of offering benefits, of making sure folks are allowed to use the benefits. The provision of the benefits becomes where the rubber hits the road. And as we all know, actually utilizing a benefit, whether CDPA or traditional home care, is near impossible today. Hiring workers is near impossible. And using a quote from a colleague, this budget just throws gasoline on the fire that is already burning. Last year, we established a minimum wage for home care workers at $3 over the state minimum wage. The governor, while looking to raise the minimum wage, the state minimum wage on an annual basis based upon the rate of inflation, undoes the link with a home care minimum wage. So as that minimum wage continues to go up, if her proposal were to pass, as that minimum wage goes up, the home care wage would stay at $18. And for those of you who are upstate outside of the Westchester, Long Island, New York City area, I know you're at $17.20 right now. It will go up to, or I'm sorry, $16.20 right now. It will go up to $17.20 on October 1st and likely $18 on December 31st of this year. And then it will stay there statewide until the minimum wage catches up. And then this job will once again become a minimum wage job, increasing salaries as the minimum wage increases. So we clearly are not appreciative of going back on the word from 9 months ago that home care is not a minimum wage job. That was the commitment that was made 9 months ago. And it didn't even take a year to renege on that commitment. So that is something that we are looking to fight for as we move forward. And as we deal with that, we are also dealing with the fact that she is authorizing managed care companies, the same managed care companies who kept all of the money that was put in to pay for those wage increases last year, those managed care companies who are routinely cutting hours and mandating them to dramatically reduce the number of FIs that are existing in the state. She would mandate them to lower their network of agencies to the lowest appropriate number. They want ideally 2 in every plan. From, that is the federal requirement, and that is what I think that would be what their end goal is, as close to 2 as possible. They have noted in conversations that they want the managed care plans to focus on economies of scale. They realistically do not want numerous FIs, and notions that people might want to choose an FI for various reasons, either wraparound benefits offered by the agency they're working with, different wage levels, different allowances for overtime or backup workers and the like. There are a host of reasons why people choose an agency, and that goes out the window with this proposal. We need to winnow that number down to the smallest number, really undoing the work that we've done over the past 4 years to try to fix the process that was in place and getting to something where we did have choice, we did maintain choice. And this proposal would undo all of that and really move forward in a way that, again, seeks to remove from the state and put on managed care plans the burden of eliminating the most FIs possible throughout the state. At the same time, while returning home care to a minimum wage job, a law that exists downstate in Westchester, Long Island, and New York City, which allows agencies to either provide benefits or increased wages for both PAs in consumer directed and PCAs in traditional home care services, would go away, but just for CDPA. The governor's budget truly looks to make PAs in this program second-class home care workers who are not eligible for this increase in wages and or benefits to the base wage. To be clear, in New York City, this would be a wage cut of up to $4 an hour. Some people are not seeing that full $4 in wages. Some are seeing it in benefits. Those benefits would go away. In Long Island and Westchester, it is a almost $3.25 cut. When fully enacted, it would be $1 billion cut to consumer-directed personal assistance. We would see the ramifications of that not just in wages, not just in benefits, but in the total ability to provide services, the total ability to hire new workers across the board. It would devastate the program across the downstate area. And frankly, the impact would not be limited to that downstate area. We clearly are opposed to this. I think my slides are out of order. Sorry. I'm going to pass this off to Julia, who is going to talk about some of the other issues that I apparently skipped over or forgot to put slides in for. So my apologies. Julia, I'll pass it to you now.
Thanks, Brian. And, our apologies for the lack of slides. We can clean this up a little bit before we send it out, but the information will remain the same. And I believe we are still in the order of our operations, so no problems there. I think that was a great segue discussing the $4 for New York City and nearly $3.25 wage cut for the collar counties, not collar counties, the with Long Island and Westchester counties. With that, there are other cuts, not financial per se in the same vein, but cuts to eligibility that we were hoping that the legislature would address, and they failed to do so. If many of you have been around for a while and may recall the original Medicaid redesign team that was convened by Governor Cuomo in 2011, that was designed specifically to reduce Medicaid spending. And of course, whenever your goal is to reduce Medicaid spending, excuse me one moment, my intern is being a little raucous. That services are not being improved. They're most likely going to be cut or greatly reduced. And that's what brought us to managed care to begin with for long-term care services, including CDPA. In 2019, he reconvened the MRT as the MRT2. And this time around, again, then Governor Cuomo had his self-appointed representatives go after CDPA in ways that would reduce the number of people that would be eligible, that currently were eligible, and I'll get to this in a moment, but remain eligible today. The kind of puts us in this, what we like to refer to as a Goldilocks situation, which I will get into more detail in a moment, but essentially reduces the amount of people that could benefit from this program due to not being disabled enough, and also due to being too disabled. So essentially having to hit this sort of sweet spot of disability in order to continue, well, not continue, but in order to, as a new consumer, get into CDPA. So in order to receive CDPA authorization, once these rules go through, an individual would need to have physical assistance with at least 3 activities of daily living. That is only 2 if the person is also diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. Activities of daily living can include anything from eating, showering, toileting, things that you need to do in order to live independently in the community. There is no such standard that you would need assistance with this many ADLs in order to enter a nursing home. But of course, if you can't get out of bed or shower without assistance or eat without assistance, it is impossible for you to live in the community without assistance. And without CDPA, the likelihood of you being entered into a nursing home against your wishes or becoming injured and attempting to take care of these things on your own is greatly increased. And of course, if you're injured and hospitalized and wind up in a rehab center, that's another pipeline, especially with the lack of aids now, to being permanently institutionalized. So additionally, those who would need 12 hours of care or more once they've been assessed would then have to go through an additional process called a high needs review panel, in which a team of doctors to whom you have no relation would take a look at your case and determine whether or not you are eligible to, or you could safely live in the community. This is arbitrary. There is no such clinical definition of what it takes to live safely in the community, despite how many hours of assistance you may need. So once again, you either have too few disabilities or have too many disabilities. Where the line is drawn is questionable, but we really don't trust Maximus, who is now in charge of these assessments, to do the right thing, which, one moment again, please. Okay, so my apologies. So this is, aside from being discriminatory, not good financial practice. While they might be saving money up top by not providing services, those who wind up in institutions, hospitalized, who will need more that will have more complex needs, will wind up having a greater cost to the Medicaid system. So it actually doesn't really make much financial sense either, which really is secondary to the fact that this is contrary to Olmstead. It's contrary to our constitutional right to live in the community as we wish. So back to the MRT2, this was rammed through the budget in 2020, right at the onset of COVID. These rules were adopted as law, and they were put on hold due to the maintenance of effort agreement that the state of New York entered into with the federal government in order to receive additional federal matching funds for Medicaid as part of the coronavirus relief funds that were given out to states. In order to accept this additional money for Medicaid programs, states had to agree not to cut eligibility or funding from their current levels while this agreement was in place. It looks like that is set to expire as soon as March 31st, 2024. We were not sure when this hammer was going to come down. It's now apparent that it can happen as early as that date. 1 year following, if the state does not spend all of the funding that we received, the likelihood of that is very slim. So we're realistically looking at an end of that maintenance of effort a little more than a year from today. And once that occurs, these laws that were passed during that budget would go on the books immediately, and new consumers would face these additional hurdles. It's really likely the last chance that the legislature has to undo these cuts to eligibility. And we're really leaning on them heavily to do so, because this is an urgent matter. If that's not addressed in this budget, I'm not sure if there is going to be the political will to do so. We will keep fighting for it, but this is the most surefire way to prevent what is going to result in thousands of people not being able to receive CDPA when they otherwise should be, who would otherwise be able to enter a nursing home. It doesn't make any sense. It's unjust. So that's something that was not addressed at all by the governor in her budget. So the legislature really needs to step up on this issue specifically to make sure that these cuts are repealed. In addition to these cuts, there was also a big alteration to the way the assessment process takes place. I think I mentioned a moment ago that Maximus has taken over. Previously, it was up to the plans to complete the assessment process. This was overhauled in that same budget and handed over to what is called the New York Independent Assessor. And again, that is run by Maximus. I don't think anyone familiar with the company Maximus, an international health provision corporation, has much good to say if they're on the receiving end of services. While it was imperfect when the plans were performing these assessments, there's clearly an inherent conflict of interest. Somehow it's gotten worse through Maximus. There notably are no timelines to complete tasks by Maximus while they had existed previously. So for example, the plan or social service district has to authorize services within 7 days that they've received an assessment. Once that happens, Maximus is off the hook. They don't have any particular time frame that they are held to. So what we're already seeing is that those who are waiting to get services are waiting 2 to 3 months just to get an appointment. And that includes people who have immediate need personal care exceptions. And normally that's supposed to be expedited. Instead of happening within the 2 weeks, it's happening within weeks to months. So if you have an immediate need, there's no way for you to wait weeks or months and be able to live safely. That is contrary to what the point of immediate need is. In fact, nobody should be waiting according to those timelines, but that's particularly urgent and people's lives are at stake. So we don't necessarily want to go back to the plans, but they were better than Maximus. With that said, we really want to work with the legislature and the executive to come up with a new system that is fair, that is timely, that ensures that people who need personal care services and consumer-directed personal assistance are able to get it faster and in a complete way. So that is something that, again, was not addressed in the governor's budget. We're going to work very closely with the legislature to press upon them the importance of overhauling the independent assessor process that was put into the budget and did take effect. That was not impacted by the maintenance of effort that I just described with the eligibility cuts. So that is something that is very urgent for us on this budget as well. Now, that said, I think it would be important to move into like how the budget works and what you can do to influence the process, because we're all here as advocates, and having a complete idea or a better idea of how the process works and how you can get involved is really key to our success here. So, you know, as I said, we've been working closely with the legislature, talking to individual legislators, telling them exactly what the problems in this budget are. That's something that you can do as well. You can do that as a constituent. You can do that as part of an organization or a coalition. Once the governor puts out her proposed budget, which she did on February 1st, The legislature, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, get to create their own budget proposals. They're called budget resolutions. So leading up to them releasing these budget resolutions, advocates will ask them to circulate sign-on letters addressing a certain issue, which we've done with fair pay in coalition with the Caring Majority. And then once there's a letter circulating, you can reach out to individual legislatures and ask them to sign on. That deadline is actually passed. I just note that as like one of our important pieces of advocacy that you yourself can take part in, having a solid ask. Additionally, asking members in their individual budget letters to include language in their budget letters about issues, again, such as fair pay, such as the eligibility cuts, everything that we've run down here. There's, of course, interaction with different types of organizations within the legislature, such as the Black, Puerto Rican, Asian Legislative Caucus. They release their own people's budget annually. So asking them to include issues such as these in their people's budget is very important as well. And yeah, if there is something that can be negotiated, this is where you come in, having a show of force, showing that people are paying attention and listening. And the more voices we have, the stronger our case. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you, Julia. There's clearly a lot of different pieces going on in this process. And, this is a process that is very in-depth and plays out over a relatively short period of time, but there is a ton at stake. So I'm going to hand it off right now to Jose Hernandez, who can talk about how you can get involved in what we're doing and how you can help and move from there. So Jose, take it away. Great. Thank you very much, Jose. And Tuesday is an important day. We want to show legislators that we can, that people care about this program, that after 4 years of attacks, after 4 years of trying their best, frankly, to kill this program, that there is still a strong group of people who will fight every effort to cause harm, and indeed are not just fighting to cause harm, but are fighting efforts to cause harm, but are fighting to improve the program through the investments and through the accountability that will actually make it work in the form of fair pay for home care, right? So, the efforts that won't stop on Tuesday. This process goes through March. All the way through March, they will be negotiating. So right now, we want to make sure that the legislature holds the line and tells the governor, no, we are with those who need these programs and want to live in the community. We want to make this a program that works, not continue to try and cause harm, not continue to try to kill it. But after Tuesday, there does continue to be a role. Please sign up on our website to get emails and updates on the process. Many of you probably found out about this webinar through those emails. So thank you for signing up. If you had it forwarded to you, if you don't sign up, if you don't get the emails, please do. You can go to cdpanews.org, and there's a little window on the side that you can put your email address, and we do not sell our lists. We do not do anything along those lines. We send updates about what's going on in the process and other updates and information throughout the year to make sure you are as up to date on what's going on with this program as possible. You can also just meet, call, send letters to your senator and assembly member to let them know how you feel. That you can schedule a meeting at any point. You can reach out to myself, you can reach out to Jose, you can reach out to Julia to find talking points. We do have talking points available on our website under our Advocacy Day section about all of these issues. Tell your story. Your story is what matters most. And stay engaged. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. The end of March may not seem that far away. It's a little over a month away, but it's a long process. Things change rapidly, things change often, and what seems like a lost cause today may be completely viable tomorrow, and what seems viable today may seem a lost cause tomorrow. It is our continued engagement throughout this process that will decide whether we win or whether we lose. And it really does take commitment right up until the moment that budget is passed, and frankly, after, in an implementation phase as well, because everyone always likes to forget about that implementation phase. So, this is a long process. There are critical points in it. And right now, we proved 4 days after her budget was released, we brought almost 500 people to Albany to say her budget was unacceptable. Doing that again the day that the health commissioner is testifying to the legislature will send a message. The more people we can get here, the louder the message that we are sending. A large part of this effort is fighting through the noise. There are thousands of groups who are trying to get their message across, and we have to fight through that noise and rise above. And y'all have always done a really good job at getting through that noise and helping raise the message about the importance of CDPA, about the importance of home and community-based services, about the importance of the home care workers. And Tuesday, we're going to send a message that CDPA is essential, that these workers are essential, that the program is essential, and that this is a critical part of what makes New York great. So at this point, we did want to leave a lot of time for questions. I see that there are a number of questions in the Q&A. Please use the Q&A to put your questions. We're going to go through now. I'm going to go through in the order that they were received. Jose, Julia, I will do my best to answer questions, but if there's something I forget or you want to weigh in, please don't hesitate. So the first question I have here, we did answer some just in real time that were not as issue based. What we have found downstate in New York City is that a lot of the PAs prefer a cash wage rather than the wage parity benefit. And apologies for the delay. Our screen keeps going down to the new questions. A lot of the workers are part-time, qualify for Medicaid, or have insurance elsewhere, and that's why they want those cash wages and not the benefits. That, coupled with certain agencies paying the full amount or close to it as a cash wage, some of us, I assume the us is an FI based upon the question and the text, view the elimination of wage parity, which is that increased amount of wages in New York City and Long Island, as a positive, where agencies that had chosen to pay the wage parity as a benefit can now transition to a cash wage and be more competitive on a wage basis. Is this a consensus position, or are there other on the side of the governor for the reasons above? So we do know that many people like to pay in some form of wages and or benefits. Many agencies actually make it a choice for the workers. Do you want these benefits? Do you want wages? That exists in CDPA and the traditional services world. There's not a surprise. Oftentimes, lower wage workers definitely prefer cash wages. Regardless of how an agency pays, the cut will come. It will force the elimination of wages. It will additional wages. It will force the elimination of benefits. It will take PAs, those workers in CDPA, down to $18 an hour, period. No benefits, no nothing. She does propose subsidizing health insurance through the exchange, the health insurance exchange from Obamacare for folks. What we know is that almost 2 out of every 3 workers are already getting health insurance either through Medicaid or subsidized through the health insurance exchange. And the others have health insurance through a spouse or their employer. She will take away the health insurance that employers offer and provide a benefit that people don't need, that they're already receiving for the 62% who are getting Medicaid or subsidized insurance through the exchange today. So this amounts to a $1 billion cut to CDPA, and that will be felt across wages. It will be felt across benefits. It will be felt in the ability to offer overtime. It will be felt in reimbursements. And once again, the plans will just use this as an excuse. Insurance companies will use this as an excuse to further cut what they do and what their support for CDPA is. Another person asked, regarding no accountability for transparency for insurance companies stealing Medicaid funds meant to pay worker wage increases. Does fair pay for home care actually include accountability and or a kind of pass-through pathway, so to speak, for the worker wage increases? And that's a great question, because it's in common misunderstanding about the fair pay for home care provision. Fair pay for home care creates a wage that is 150% of the overall minimum wage. It would be $22.50 today. As the minimum wage goes up, it would remain $150. If the minimum wage became $20, the home care wage would be $30. So it would grow. But what it's also meant to do is invest in home care overall and make sure that that money is actually getting from point A, the Department of Health, to point D, the worker, right? It goes from last year, it went from the Department of Health to the managed care plans, and they did that very well. It went from the agencies to the worker, and agencies did that very well. Where things got lost was in getting from managed care plans to the agencies. The managed care plans kept the money. Fair pay for home care would hold them accountable by mandating that plans pay a certain rate so that that money would get through. And it is all spelled out in the law. So that is a critical part of fair pay. It is not just an investment in our workforce, it is an investment in the overall system, making sure that funds that are meant to provide services actually get to those trying to provide services. All right, something's going on with my system and it froze. Next question is, isn't it too late for budget letters? Yes, those that went through, Julia did classify that. And can we get numbers on how many consumers were negatively affected by delays in the assessment? How many have been refused home care based on medical instability or whatever? We do not have numbers on how many people have been negatively affected. What we know is that the average waiting period for the assessment process through the independent assessor is about 8 to 12 weeks. So that is 8 to 12 weeks that people who are trying to use the service are waiting to get an assessment. They have not yet put reassessments in that system. They have not yet implemented that high needs assessment. That will only add to the amount of time and double it for those who need the high needs assessment, because they will have to go through this assessment twice. So that is why we want to undo that independent assessment, because it is causing unnecessary and dangerous delays in people's ability to get services. Can you send a sample letter to send to our legislators and a list of who to send to? We will be providing letters throughout the process through our email. They are generally form letters. They will open up, you will have the ability to generally open up and amend the letter to tell your story as a part of that letter, but we will be providing those throughout. And if you wanted to send a letter to the editor, to your local paper, or if you wanted to communicate on something different, you are welcome to reach out to us. All of our email addresses are our first name at cdpaneys.org. So you're welcome to reach out and we will do our best to help you in crafting those letters and crafting that outreach. For those of us that are unable to attend, can you send a list of what senators or assembly members might be worthwhile to visit in our area? Yes, Susan, we can do that. If you want to reach out, if you are an agency and you want to reach out to a group of members, please feel free to reach out. We'll help you in identifying those. If you are an individual and need help finding out who your senator and assembly member is to go have that meeting or to go call them, you can find that on our website. And there is a link that will provide their name, their outreach phone number, both in their district office as well as here in Albany, and emails and the like. So all of that exists on our website, but we are also happy to help you coordinate meetings with larger groups of members. I'm going very quick, trying to get through as many of these. So, if I miss something, please correct me, and I apologize to the interpreters for the speed with which I am talking. Can you avoid those organizations responsible for budgets review? I have interest because I am a family member whose mom has been CDPA for 12 years. My family relies on these workers. The program is essential for my mom. The budget is reviewed, is proposed, as Julia had said, the budget's proposed by the governor, and then it is reviewed by the legislature, both the Senate and Assembly, as they look to build their own budget and respond to provide what they think of the governor's budget. That process is taking place right now. Then we will go through negotiations. We need to continue to drive as many responses to the legislature to get them to side with us in this process. The more we do that, the more they hear from us, the more they will fight for us. That is, it is a democratic process, and they will listen when there is a demand. First and foremost, they want to return to Albany in 2 years, and they do that by listening to their constituents. So that is the power we have. Managed care companies have a lot of power, but they do not have a lot of people who are going to come and fight for the managed care company. Y'all as that grassroots, you are out there, you are making your voice heard and fighting for this program, and that's what matters. So that is the process. Be communicating with your legislators, be communicating with the governor, and letting them know that this program needs to be protected and invested in. Can you talk about the difference in the authorization process for CDPAP FIs from what was proposed in 2019? I wish I could. The authorization process, there was a long authorization process. The state put out a request, it was called a request for offers. And over the course of the 4 years, the legislature, with input from us, with input from others, tweaked that process, amended that process, and they were ready to go live on January 15th of this year. They delayed that till April 1st, which happens to be the day that the budget is supposed to be done. And, in the budget itself, that authorization process is ended. And they just say, we're going to just create rules that determine who we authorize. We have been told, trust us, we're going to authorize everyone who was previously authorized and let the managed care companies sort it out. All we have is what we're told. The language that the governor proposed lets them do almost anything. So there's nothing that makes me believe they are actively lying, but at the same time, even their proposed solution of just giving this all to the managed care plans, the same plans who just stole $750 million that was meant for the agencies so they could pay the workers, doesn't sound like a viable solution. Managed long-term care was created in large part so they could cut hours, so they could cut reimbursements, and the state would not actually have consequences. The state wasn't doing the cuts, the plans were. They are extending that now to taking away agencies' ability to exist. The state won't be taking away the authorization. The state will authorize everybody. It is the plans who will take that away. And the state will just shrug their shoulders and say, that's terrible. But it is the process they set up. I have a PA who has Medicare. He's older than 65. Folks on Medicare can't get health insurance on the New York State marketplace. So how will that work with the governor's proposal? Your PA will get Medicare. They will just get a wage cut. If they are getting wages, they will get a wage cut. If they're getting benefits, those benefits will go away. The governor's proposal won't work for that worker, just like it won't work for the strong majority of workers who are already getting health insurance, either through Medicaid, through the exchange, through Medicare, or other systems. It is just a cut in wages and benefits that make workers in CDPA second-class home care workers. And that's really what that's all this proposal would do. How can the state continue to pay for these programs if New York's home care Medicaid program is an outlier? Its spending on the home care benefit is roughly the same as the other 49 states combined, and if the tax-paying residents are leaving the state. According to a federal analysis of 2019 Medicaid spending, per capita expenditures in New York were 8 times the US average. The number of home care aides employed in New York grew from 250,000 in 2011 to 480 in 2021. This sounds like the claims from the Empire Center, who just routinely, who also said, we don't need more home care workers. McDonald's and Burger King can't afford to hire people right now. So, those workers would be better off going over there. I think what we value in New York is not the same as what is valued in Alabama. And I think most people that live in New York are proud of that. We have a set of values that we live by. We work off the idea that people should be able to get home care. And the fact of the matter is, we are one of the poorest states in the nation. Poverty inflicts disability. Poverty makes people rely on home care more. It makes people rely on Medicaid's home care system more. And because we have more home care workers than anyone, well, yes, we have more home care workers than Wyoming, because Wyoming has the same number of people as the Capital District in New York. Right? Wyoming has a population of 500,000, so they're not going to have 480,000 home care workers. New York has the amount of home care workers New York needs is the amount of home care workers that will meet the need of those who need home care. If people want to engage in a conversation on eligibility, I will gladly engage in a conversation on eligibility. I think that the eligibility should be what it is. I think, and we as an organization think that the expansion of the buy-in is great. We think that the expansion of the essential plan to cover long-term care benefits that was done last year is great. The problem is no one can actually use those benefits. And if we want to have a discussion on eligibility, let's have a discussion on eligibility. But the fact of the matter today is people want to pretend that we are offering benefits, while the fact of the matter is those services that those benefits cover don't actually exist. And that is where we are. And we can tax the folks at the Empire Center. We can tax the billionaires. We have more billionaires than any state in this country except California. And we're only about 4 billionaires behind them. Currently we give billions of dollars to manage long-term care companies that are not actually providing any benefit to the people of New York. Let's get rid of them. Let's actually use the public monies not to make Centene, which is the parent company of Fidelis, the 8th largest corporation in America. Let's make sure we can provide services to those who need them. So that would be our thoughts on that. And we do have enough money. It is just the will and our priorities. There's a correction there, so I'm just going to assume that has been dealt with. Has anything been said about grandfathering in participants who are already in CDPA who would otherwise fall into the pitfall of qualifying criteria, the ADL's rule that Julia was talking about for CDPA and personal care? Folks who do not have 3 ADLs, and it's past time, I'm going to try and get through these last few questions. Folks who do not have 3 ADLs and are already using services will not have their services canceled. The problem becomes if they lose their services for any period of time, say they're in the hospital and need to go to an acute care nursing home so that they can rehab. They're out for a period of time. Their services are canceled because they're out for a period of time. They will not be able to get those services back. So that is where we are today. Those who are in the program and maintain continuous eligibility with no interruption will stay in the program. If for any reason you are no longer able for a period of time, usually due to illness, to use the services, your eligibility, your grandfathering will stop. And you will cease to be eligible for the program if you cannot prove 3 ADLs. So that is for that. And new folks, of course, will not be able to come into the program. And that's really what they're looking for, is denying people's entry in the future. And frankly, waiting until they cost the state tremendously more money because they need more services that could have been avoided if we provided the small amount of services upfront. Why wasn't wage parity required for CDPA statewide? I wonder if there's a perception in Albany that downstate CDPA workers have gotten an unfair advantage. You know, wage parity was something that was negotiated in 2011 for just the home care side. We were added in 2015, I think, and there was a deal at the time that the program was created that just made it for those counties. There are pluses and minuses to wage parity. We tend to think that it's an imperfect solution, but it's something that does aid in the areas where it's created. We would much prefer higher wages across the board for everyone. The fact of the matter is these cuts, the extent of these cuts, will impact people across the state. Despite wage parity not existing upstate, despite those higher wage levels, higher benefit levels not existing, the cut is to such a massive extent, $1 billion, all funds, that it will impact everyone across the state. You will see, if you live in Albany, if you live in Buffalo, if you live in Wayne County, your services will suffer because of this cut to New York City and downstate. If the vast majority of the health aides in home care industry are getting their health insurance coverage through Medicaid, why would the state continue to give the aides $240 in wage parity? The unions are getting 100% of the $240 wage parity, but only 25% of their members are getting coverage through the union. I can't speak to the union's health care rates. People who are in unionized shops, the employer provides benefits, provides payments and benefits to those workers. The fact of the matter is, for many, those benefits aren't necessary. For those for which they are necessary, they're important and they are being provided. For the workers who would choose higher wages or other benefits in lieu, they do that, and they often opt for wages. We want that option to exist, and it is important that that option exists. And the fact of the matter is, existing in a second-class workforce only serves to harm this program. So whether or not this commenter, who is anonymous, knows what the union's take-up rate is, there are no citations. I can't speak to the accuracy of that. However, what I do know is this is $1 billion all funds cut. This is $1 billion, when the federal money is factored in as well, cut to this program that will cause drastic harm and result in wage cuts of up to $4 an hour for those who rely on these wages for their livelihood. We heard of one worker who, with the wage parity subsidies, she is a single mom of 3 teenage sons living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And we're going to cut $4 an hour from her salary. That doesn't sound right. That is not something that New York should be proud of doing. And then there seem to be many in Albany who agreed with us about the uselessness of the MLTCs. How do we start a movement or jump on that bandwagon? We're trying. We are having conversations. It is not a short conversation, and unfortunately, I don't think it is a conversation we can have in a month. But it is something that we have to build. We have to start to work on, and that's something that Sedani is going to take up and keep moving forward. And that's something that I think it's a conversation that the state needs to start having, and hopefully we can help initiate that conversation, because the fact is, what the managed care companies are paying for is home care. If you're paying for one benefit and not actually providing the care management that was the entire rationale for moving there in the first place, what are we paying for? And no one can answer that question. But we're giving them billions of dollars a year, billions of dollars that could be going towards wages and could be going towards creating a home care benefit that we can be proud of. And I would argue that's where that money should go. So that seems to answer all of the questions I have in the box. I want to thank everyone. It's 10 minutes over, and we still have most of the people who were here to begin with. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope to see you Tuesday. I hope that you join us. And if you can't join us on Tuesday, I hope that you are getting our messages and signing up to make sure that you know what's going on in this program and can be updated throughout the budget process so that, you know, we can fight to keep this program, because together we not only can, but will win. It's a slow process. It's a grinding process, but we can fight and we will win. And we will beat those who think that that our home care benefits are too generous, who think that managed long-term care plans and not Medicaid recipients should be getting the money, and who think that, you know, workers would be better served in Burger King than as a home care worker. Home care workers are essential. CDPA is essential. And thanks for joining us.